But that game on Sunday was a particularly tough one for Carson Wentz. What do you see when you watch tape of him?
Well, the biggest thing is a lack of consistency. Week to week, he can have one great game and then the next one's a bad game. Not seeing the field extremely well. When I went back and watched the tape, and now Patriots are good. They're not going to give you wide open guys all over the field throughout the course of the game, but you got to stick with your reads. You got to see what they're doing, and you got to be able to scan the field and get through your progressions. And really felt like Carson had trouble really seeing the field and knowing where to go. He would look at one guy, that guy wasn't there, and then he kind of ran around and tried to make a play. You just can't live in that world week in and week out. You got to know what you're seeing. You got to scan the field. You got to go through your progressions, and you got to make tough throws.
They were in a tough one last week against the Patriots. They got another tough draw this week against the Seahawks at home. Of course, the Seahawks have been great on the road. That's a 1 o'clock game on Sunday. Kurt Warner's top 5 quarterbacks of Week 11 still ahead. In the meantime, we've got a Myles Garrett sighting today in New York. The Cleveland Browns defensive lineman, with representatives from the NFL Players Association at his side, appealing the NFL's decision to suspend him indefinitely for his role in last Thursday's fight at the end of the Browns game against the Steelers on Thursday Night Football. There was a fight in which Garrett removed Mason Rudolph's helmet and hit him over the head with it. Ian Rappaport, what's his argument?
Lindsay, Myles Garrett has 2 separate arguments to help, in his mind, either reduce the suspension or even make it finite. And the reason I say finite is because Garrett believes and has argued that the CBA does not allow for an indefinite suspension for an on-field act. Basically, that it is just not in there. So he hopes to have it a finite number of games rather than the way it is now, which is indefinite and at the whim of Roger Goodell. That is one of his arguments. The other argument is precedent. Antonio Smith, the former Texans defensive lineman, a couple years back, took his helmet off, took a helmet off an opposing player and hit him with it, and ended up being suspended 2 preseason games, 1 regular season game. Garrett hopes to have that kind of suspension. Meanwhile, a couple of the other guys involved has their fate either in the air or finalized. Larry Ogunjobi, the Browns defensive lineman, saw his suspension upheld 1 game, although his fine of $10,000 was taken away. And then Marquise Pouncey still waits, finding out whether or not his 3-game suspension appeal is going to be, if his appeal is going to work or if the suspension is going to be upheld. And then, of course, there's a situation surrounding Mason Rudolph, the Steelers quarterback. He did apologize and make his point clear today to reporters, but he is going to be fined for his role in this fight. We should find out about that either Friday or Saturday.
Speaking of Mason Rudolph, Ian, you mentioned we heard from him today, and he did strike a much more conciliatory tone than we heard from him last Thursday.
I should have done a better job handling that situation. I have no ill will towards Myles Garrett. Great respect for his ability as a player, and I know that if Myles could go back, he would handle the situation differently. As for my involvement last week, there's no acceptable excuse. The bottom line is I should have done a better job keeping my composure in that situation, and it falls short of what I believe it means to be a Pittsburgh Steeler and a member of the NFL.
We can't control that. We couldn't control initially. We couldn't, all the sentencing and stuff like that. We're just going to control what we control. We have nothing to do with that. Myles has great representation, but more importantly, Myles will represent himself well. We're going to continue to support him and Larry, and we will not waver with that support.
Let's get the latest headlines now and some more fallout from that game from Thursday Night Football last week. It doesn't sound like the Steelers are going to have Juju Smith-Schuster this Sunday against Cincinnati. Juju did not practice today. He's dealing with a knee injury and is in concussion protocol. Both those issues happened on this play, that same play in that loss to the Browns 6 days ago. Mitch Trubisky said today that his hip injury feels, quote unquote, a lot better, and he hopes to play Sunday against the Giants. Trubisky was injured in the first half of the loss to the Rams, but he didn't miss time in the game until late in the second half. The team is calling the injury a hip pointer. Notable injuries going into week number 12. The Wednesday practice report, DJ Chark was limited for the Jags. James Conner, Nelson Aguilar did not practice for their respective teams. DeMarcus Lawrence, Jameis Winston both did practice for